That's a really, really cool arrangement, Colin. There are so many fun things about it. And I think there are a few things I can help you with too. So, right up from the beginning here, I really love the just the the very string kind of sound. Just like focus on the strings. You just really keeping, as I would say, setting the mood, right? And to have a piece with a presumed supremacy of strings and thereby the first violin as well. This is similar to the beginning of the Sixth Symphony. First movement of the Sixth Symphony does the same thing. It just starts off with an introduction in strings only, and that also sets the mood really well. So that it's kind of nice. I've been evaluating. I've probably evaluated about 15 scores by this time, and there are a lot of horns at the beginning, including my own. And it's nice to sort of have a breath of fresh air. Now, this is kind of nice too. The proper use of portato here, with a tenuto mark under all the notes of the slur. So I feel that works pretty well. And here you've interpreted the turn. Like the Beethoven would assess it as the principal note. Da 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 da. But I mean, there are different ways of interpreting it, of course. It might have a. In any case, if you decide to start on the note above the principal, it might have a different kind of rhythm to it. About the only thing I would say that you might be missing here would be perhaps maybe a little bit of ritardando, so you can kind of hang on that top note. Maybe a little bit of a push in there dynamically. Da 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 crescendo bomb, da 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 fermata, da, and then diminuendo, da 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 da. Little bit of see here you're putting the fermata here, but what about a fermata on the last note, right? Which is what Beethoven asked for. All right. And then this is very cool. I just looked at a score in the B compilation of evaluations that did something similar, but with different instruments. But I feel that this balances pretty nicely. You've got the flutes, da da da, bum bum bum, and clarinets, and then you end up with this chord, and then the first violins take over. And I feel that the trade-off is beautifully balanced in terms of the texture. What I'm not so convinced by is the slurring here. Down, up, right? You're just you're basically saying down bow, up bow, or whatever. I mean, I like the crescendo in the middle, but and then here you've got these incredibly long slurs over your string parts, and I feel like this is just not really, this doesn't really take into account any of the the crossing of the strings by the bow and everything else. This should be broken into smaller bits, I think, just one per beam group. Da, 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 right? I think that just works better. And then this pizzicato, of course, is all fine. But what if this were just up, down, right? It's just much more cohesive, and that way, you get the articulation on the downbeat, right? Now, Colin, have you watched my 12 common scoring errors where I talk about not slurring across the downbeat unless it really, really makes sense? So, I think you missed that one with this. It's something that will come up. There are times when it kind of doesn't matter. And here, I think, you really need to feel bum, bum, dun, dun. So you're setting this up. Look, you've got down bows here. You got a pluck on the, right here down with the double basses, and you've got the bassoons, right? So to have this sort of come in late and kind of not line up. Just sounds like the music is not really working together as much as it could. There is you did some changes here to the pattern. I'm not sure that they really work. Like that, you chose to sort of kind of harmonize this, right? So like instead of the pattern going, F, F, B flat, F, A, F, D, F, right? You've got this other kind of thing happening in here, and I'm not sure that it really works. That it doesn't quite, the notes don't quite say what they need to say in terms of supporting this, so you end up with some conflicts. Like, for instance, you're kind of sitting on this F on the offbeats, right? Okay, so they don't always line up with the offbeat pitches that are happening in the other, like on the in the middle strings. Excuse me, I wanted to say. So I think that this needs a little bit of attention, a little bit of fixing around. But this is cool, like the way you're using the horns in here. I think you're trying to sort of play by the rules a little bit in some respects. And just try to use open pitches for natural horns. And sometimes you kind of have no options, right? Like for instance, like this B is going to have to be half stopped, right? Or I think there was another one on the next page. I'll comment on it when I get to it. But yeah, so let's continue on with yada da 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 da. This is kind of fun. We're sort of dividing this up, seconds, firsts, right? And then you have the seconds continue on. Is a cool idea, and then answered by the bassoons, and then you do it again. Da 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 bum 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 bum. All right, and then here it's like all staccatos. I mean, I'm just kind of, it's like all staccatos in the winds, perfectly fine, and then you have this kind of strange articulation style here, dun 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 dun. I'm not so sure. It's like, I wish that there was more unity, right? Just think that it would sort of tie together a lot better, and then you could more decisively set up this downbeat here. Now, something I completely, entirely approve of is the way that you have chosen to use a very emphatic color of line here. You're setting up like the harmonic density in the way that you have outlined the functions here, so that you can go straight into like maintaining the strength and just basically just playing loud on this bar, and then kind of echoed by the having a dynamic and textural contrast in the winds. So that all works fine. Some of these, like most of your double stops are fine, but this triple stop is just kind of funky. I pulled out my mandolin and I messed around with it. And, it's playable, but it's not such a comfortable transition. Maybe you're a string player and you played it yourself just to make sure that it worked fine. And if so, then my apologies, but it just doesn't play that well. There are ways of doing this if you want to do double stops that probably make more sense. Like for instance, like here you could just do a row of thirds, right? E thirds, F thirds, G thirds, right? Just we're taking these pitches here, and then there are ways of dealing with these other pitches as well. If you're just going to have like a G fourth and then an A third, right? And then a C third, right? Or some other kind of layout, then it might work a lot better than this kind of stretched out thing, where you're enclosing the second violins. This is all good though. Down bow, down bow, down bow with eighths, and there's just lots of separation, so there's time to recover the bow. That all works great. And then just horns doing what they do well, right? The sound of the half stop B here is going to be covered by the other instruments around it, right? So B sounding E, right? So if you've got a sounding E like this F here, and then the E here on the violas. That'll just all sort of cover over any weirdness. Yeah. And you know I mean, maybe there could have been a little bit more, like, you know, rather than having everybody double everything, right? Like the flutes and the oboes doubling each other. You know. Yeah. It's not so bad though. Yeah, and this is cool. I mean, this is sort of a model about how you could do the double stops for the second, right? So first and second, right? And you just get the same really satisfying sound. All right, well, let's not dwell on it too much, but you know, but pretty cool opening, right? So now let's move on to yada da da dum rium badum, and this is very nice. The first violins, and then the clarinets kind of taking the harmony. So look, you don't need to tell them to go down bow here, right? Like they will do that anyway. Like I would just say avoid telling your string players what their bowing is. I mean, if you are going to have this performed with your, you know, say the orchestra that you're in, maybe you're in a university orchestra or, you know, or community orchestra, maybe for all I know you're in a professional orchestra and they're going to perform this next week, whatever. But if you're not in that situation, do not bother, because the string players would like to deal with that themselves. Thank you very much. A. And B, you know, if this is the beginning of a passage and there is a crescendo here, then this is obviously going to be a down bow, right? So there's just no way. It's like putting training wheels on a Maserati, right? You don't need it. So da da, da da. I don't know. I think I might start a new slur here. Anyhow, one thing I just want to make sure that I had a chance to talk about this before we jump to the next page. I kind of got a little bit lost in the like the difference in articulation between these parts. First flute and clarinets going in octaves, walking down this way. You know, by the time you get to the C and B, it's going to be a little weak, but it's all right. Just as long as everybody just kind of like, if the articulation matched, that would actually help the first flute stand out more, rather than these staccatos, which would kind of get a little bit swallowed up. You know, if they're more integrated, then it'll sound better. Perhaps you were actually intending to add the slurs here and you forgot to in the editing phase. And this is kind of nice, you know, like you went for the full, you know, instead of just like copping out like Beethoven does in the piano score, just, you know, kind of just going to these notes up an octave in the left hand. You just really go for like a contrary motion, right, and then parallel motion. It's really kind of fun. So I just wanted to let you know that it worked. All right, okay. All right, so now we're getting to the yeah, and it's you know, I felt that this was you were trying to kind of solve that you know, the whole problem of figuration, right? So that it doesn't wear out the player's hand, it doesn't get off beat and everything else. Okay, so this is a cool solution to have triplets in another voice behind the dotted rhythm, right? So, I mean, it's not a perfect solution, right? You kind of get that, you know, doodle 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 kind of a sound while you're going dun 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 dun. So, in terms of like the precision of this, like you're going to have your players working together, upper winds and violins, just, you know, trying to really kind of get that sort of biting, dry kind of dun 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 dun. You know, it's like as you know, you're going 16th to staccato, right? So it's going to feel dry and very precise, and then sort of have the. I mean, it's an interesting contrast between types of energy, right? So long as the players are are good at it. It's like this is something I wouldn't want to throw out like a community or a student orchestra, right? But like in a, like a nice professional orchestra, I think that there's like no problem with it. It might not be exactly what you think. But and then here, like going to 16th note tremolo, which by the way I would write out the first beat, right? So just like write out 4/16ths in a row, and then have just a standard half note with the two beams, the two shakes. All right, like this. Just writing it out, like when you have something like this, is a nice courtesy for the conductor and the player, because that way you're absolutely sure that this isn't actually intended to be unmeasured tremolo with three beams, right? Because sometimes this is something that people always get wrong. Like for instance, I'm working on an arrangement where I have pizzicato, and the pizzicato has got slurs in it, where I want the double basses to sort of emulate an electric bass. I'm sort of transcribing the electric bass part and adapting it too, not just copying it. But it's got this nice sort of like what we would call hammer on, right? An electric playing. So playing a note and then adding a fingering to the next pitch up. So it's the kind of thing where a player might look at it and think, maybe this is supposed to be bowed because of all these little slurs. So I might actually have a note to say, pizzicato slur, in parentheses, just so that they know, right? So it's the same kind of courtesy, right? So just think about adding that. All right, and this is really lovely. The descending clarinets right in here work just really beautifully. That and then that's in the piano score too. But then now you're kind of adding, like you're sort of upping the game here with these other parts. I like how the oboe comes in a little early, and it really kind of sets things up so that all these parts just sort of work together. The cello's providing the outside of the harmony, and then you've got this little right, which is taken over by bassoons. Right, and then the horns take over on that sort of middle voice. And this was really beautifully full. I thought that it was a really nice harmony, and I love the way that you're sort of letting the winds go to dun 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 dun, and then in the now this I'm not so sure about this da 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 da. I think this is not going to turn out the way you think. To quote somebody from Star Wars. So yeah, I don't think that this helps anything to do to slur it like that. I mean, it's playable, it's doable, but it like in terms of like the energy where everybody is headed at this point, it's a little iffy. If you're gonna do this, then make your if you're going to go to separate voices here with one in the rest, then have your upper voice on a separate stem. Okay, it just makes things a lot clearer. Sorry about my squeaky chair. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's complaining. It's tired of me sitting on it. Yeah. So. Pretty much works. The thing that I would be more concerned about here, is that the winds might get way too strong as this passage pushes towards the end here. Because you just really have everybody kind of driving home this, C, 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 and I mean, and it is a good interpretation, a good, like kind of following Beethoven's kind of outlook here. If you're assuming that the violins, the string section is going to be stronger, then yeah, it kind of works. But I'm just worried about this dominating, right? And also the horns a bit. But I mean, the horns help to sort of obscure this slurring, which I'm not too convinced by. The thing, though, that I find the most possibly problematic is this trill. In this trill on this D. I feel like it's. I think it's an. Is it an octave higher in the original score? I have the wrong criteria screen up here on my laptop. So yeah, I think it's just a little low and furry. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it needs to be higher, and and I think it might need a little bit of support from another instrument, like maybe clarinet or some other player. Most likely clarinet. Okay, now this was something that I addressed in my pitfalls video, and that is spreading out some of these harmonies. I think this low A flat third here is a bit. I think the pitches are a bit too close together. Okay, and then here you have like the F sharp and the A flat. So you've done some spreading, but I think that there's a way of spreading this out a little bit more. Maybe the E flat, like maybe there could have been like a low A flat fifth, or maybe you could have just like put the C up higher, up an octave higher, or even further, right? But it just needs. This is just really, it's just going to be a terrifying sound down there. I don't think it's going to really contribute to the push as much as it's going to grind. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I would just say, watch out for the balance here. Watch out for that trill. Watch out for the clumpiness of this harmony down here. Just because you set this up here doesn't mean that you have to stick to this, right? For just to keep the cellos in that position. You can change around the voicing to accommodate the different character of the chord. But aside from all of those little picky little suggestions, I think this is a really great score. I think there's just a lot to it. And I was sort of joking about what if you are what if you are going to be playing this with your orchestra? But I don't see why you couldn't. I think it's more or less doable. Just if you wanted to go ahead and score the rest of it, and you are working with an orchestra, maybe part of an orchestra, one of the kind of cool things about community orchestras, student orchestras, and so on, is that they are a lot more open to people, just suggesting, hey, I scored something. Do you think we could read it sometime or play it sometime? And that has been, I was not even a regular member of the youth orchestra that I hung out with. I was just there a lot, and so I got asked to do things. Hey, could you transcribe this cello part for bass clarinet, or hey, do you have anything that we could play for this memorial concert or whatever, so anyways, but yeah, just I think it's playable, and I think you would learn a lot from hearing people run through it. So very cool score, Colin, and I'm really glad that you shared it with me and that you're supporting on Patreon during this challenge. It's really, really awesome, and it's just very, very helpful. So with that, I will just say thanks to all of my Patreon subscribers and all of the Orchestration Online participants. And listen, if you are in this same level as Colin, then you should be leaving them a comment below. The semi-brev participants should stick together, eh? And everybody else out there viewing, if there is something that I missed, or you disagree with me about something, or you have a suggestion that I didn't get to or that I didn't think of, just let Colin know below, all right? And that'll just be helpful. And Colin, if you can make some comments on some other scores that come up in these releases, that would be really helpful. It would be just awesome for me. And people should just really keep track of their of their releases and keep an eye on them, and just engage with people who give you suggestions. All right, let's keep this conversation going, because that makes it all worthwhile for me. All right, so I think I'm going to go evaluate another score this afternoon, and maybe I'll release it to the same day that this is released, because this is just tons of fun. So I'll see everybody really soon.